The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NBA Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in the NBA from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NBA Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest stories in the NBA.
The Oklahoma City Thunder get a big win over the Dallas Mavericks.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're discussing the Thunder's win over the Dallas Mavericks, punching their ticket to Las Vegas. SGA dominates this game. Luka really struggled. And Isaiah Hartenstein proved to be a massive addition for a Thunder team that still hasn't seen itself full just yet. First and foremost, the NBA got exceptionally lucky that this was the bracket for the second ever NBA Cup semifinal. They got lucky in year one when LeBron and the Lakers went and won the cup and kind of gave some legitimacy to it. When you see LeBron celebrate it, when you see the Lakers raise a banner, like that stuff helps. It helps the league get this off the ground. But then you get this format in the quarterfinals where you have the Thunder playing the Mavericks, which is a genuine organic rivalry. You have the Rockets and Warriors with all of those storylines, including the fact that the Rockets just cannot beat the Warriors for some reason. And then out east, you have a gutty Magic team that fell short against Milwaukee. And you have tonight Trey going back into the Garden where he was really famous or infamous if you're in New York. So this set up perfectly. And tonight was a great first night of the quarterfinals where you saw the Mavericks Thunder game show some higher intensity. Now, I think that was a little bit of both, right? It's a little bit of the NBA Cup, the stakes, the money. Like a lot of these Thunder players are on their first contract. So the added financial gain from this is still a massive deal. I don't know anyone who would brush off an additional $500,000, but especially not on their first contract in the NBA. So that's big, but also you're going to test yourself against the Mavericks. And Shea talked about that of he's thought about this series every day. And that it's something where you want to go win the West. You want to go win a championship. The Mavericks just won the West. You're going to need to get through Dallas. And we spent this whole week so far previewing a Mavericks team that has had the Thunder's number for the majority of the last season. And in this game, you had Luka, you had Kyrie, no PJ Washington, no Chet, two very important to varying degrees players for each side. So this was just a fun night. And the NBA, I think, really won tonight as the Thunder won in this game, 118-104. The Thunder handled every single Mavericks run with great maturity. The Mavericks got out to an 8-0 start. It was their largest lead of the night, one of their few leads, only two ties and five lead changes, all coming in the first quarter. And the Mavericks got out to that run, and the Thunder didn't blink. And the Mavericks cut that lead down inside double figures in the fourth quarter, a once 20-point lead. And the Thunder didn't blink. They just kept coming against Dallas. Five lead changes, two ties. The Thunder won the rebounding battle 52-44, which is super impressive whenever you factor in the makeup of each team, where the Mavericks always had a center on the floor. The Thunder did not, but it was in large part due to Kenrich Williams, who we're going to talk about, who had a great night. The Thunder forced Dallas into 18 turnovers. OKC only commits 13 of their own. The Mavericks shot 47% from the floor, 41% from three, 68% from the free throw line. OKC shot 45, 40, and 85. The biggest difference in this game was the defense. The Thunder made the Mavericks work for everything. And I think the Thunder executed their playoff game plan and got a win. And I know it was frustrating for Thunder fans in the playoffs where you lose in 6 games. The point differential was 0 in that series, and it was a hard-fought battle. But strategically, the Thunder did everything it did in the playoffs to an nth degree in this one, where it was high ball pressure for Luka. You're double teaming him every single time down the floor. You're blitzing him off screens. And yes, you were susceptible. A large part of that 8-0 run, guess what it was? It was picking up Luka really high. Luka makes a great read, either with a phenomenal jaw-dropping skip pass to the corner or dumping it to Lively. Lively then makes a good processing decision in the short roll, and the Mavericks could create advantages that way. And that's what happened for the majority of the night. Now, here's where it was different than the playoffs. The Mavericks didn't get some magical game from PJ Washington, and PJ would have made a massive difference in this game with how the Thunder were guarding Luka. But Luka labors his way to 16 points. He was stuck on 2 points for the majority of this contest, but 16 points, 11 boards, 5 assists, 4 steals, and 6 turnovers is the worst game Luka's ever played. Kyrie had a ho-hum night by his standards. The only player who you can look at and say, man, he was playing way above his skis would be Najee Marshall, who had 19 off the bench. But even Najee, it was just all repeatable stuff. But I think that's where you get to the crux of the issue. I think every time that you see an NBA player get a layup line 3 or go uncovered on a backdoor cut, your guttural reaction to that and your immediate reaction to that is just, oh my gosh, what terrible defense. What are the Thunder doing? Right. But in order to cut the faucet off of Luka Doncic and in order to have him play 40 minutes where he's a minus 14 and just dreadful offensively, you have to send that added attention. You have to pick him up really high, be physical with him, blitz him off screens, and do what the Thunder did tonight. What the Thunder did better in this game than they did in the postseason was that they flew out to the corners really well. It started, in the first quarter, different verse, same as the first, where the Mavericks quickly got 7 corner threes in the first quarter, and they were generating those looks that they wanted. But Alex Caruso checks in, and he made a difference. Like, this is why you go get Alex Caruso. This is stuff you could not do when you had Josh Giddey. Everybody on the floor can defend. Look at who played and who didn't play, right? Like, Wiggins only played 9 minutes. AJ Mitchell, got 10. And those two guys are not bad defenders. They're just not defenders to the caliber of Kenrich, to Caruso, to Kaysen, to Lou, to J-Dub. Right? Those are who got the lion's share of the workload. Because they were able to be physical, they were able to be athletic. So it was a maximized version of how the Thunder played Dallas in the playoffs. Because in this game, you also had no backup center. And instead of playing Jay Will, who's on the sidelines in street clothes, you got the very best version of Kenrich Williams, who was a plus 17 in his minutes as the center, who was the very best small ball 5 on this Thunder roster, which was a key difference from the playoffs. You have Caruso, a key difference from the playoffs, who is the best defender as a guard that can scale up and contest with bigs down low and make bigger wings struggle. And of course, you know what he can do, just heads up on a player of his size. So you just got the very best you could from this Thunder defense. And it wasn't always pretty, but it was enough. And that's where, if you're a Thunder fan, you're looking at this series and saying, well, when this gets ran back this summer, which I think it will, I think that you'll see the Mavericks and the Thunder play in the Western Conference Finals. Well, by then, knock on wood, you'll have Chet Holmgren and Hartenstein, and you'll be able to go blow for blow, center for center between Gafford and Lively. And you'll really take control of the series. And if you're a Mavericks fan, you're saying, well, look, I mean, it was a competitive game for the majority of this contest. The Thunder had a back-breaking third quarter. And who knows, if PJ Washington could play, a guy that is uniquely designed to hit his open corner threes whenever you see those high processing plays from Luka and Lively in the short roll, and who can take advantage of a smaller matchup, then the Mavericks feel like this could be a lot different. And that's where it goes back to what we said on Monday and Tuesday morning. We won't know anything after this game. I still believe that because these teams will look entirely different. Like I know that PJ Washington in the ecosystem of NBA, like fandom and social media and things like that, is a marginal player. He is a pivotal player for what Dallas does. And it's became a running joke that he has his career nights against Oklahoma City. Go back and look at that November game. He had 3 open shots all night. He was still dominant. He still had a career night. Because he can exploit those matchups whenever you have to send smaller guys out to after you swarm the paint, after you swarm Luka. There's only so much you can do. And I think that while it was frustrating for fans to hear Mark say this in the postseason, it's 100% right. It's the NBA. To be a team as good as Dallas, to be a team as good as Oklahoma City, you're going to have to surrender something. And what you're hoping to surrender is something that has a chance to fail. No offense to PJ Washington, there's a chance that PJ Washington plays like PJ Washington does in November against, the Spurs and not the PJ Washington that you saw all last postseason. This is a guy who's a career 35% three-point shooter a season this year, which is one of his better years, 36% from three in this season alone. So but you know that if you did not give that attention to Luka, he would be off the charts phenomenal. Because when they did try to play Luka heads up, the Thunder, yes, you're right, they are the most equipped to defend Luka and Kyrie. If you wanted to play a straight 1-5 defense, don't send pressure, don't blitz them, don't hedge on screens, just play ball. Yes, the Thunder have better defenders than most. But look at the possessions Luka got when you did do that. You can think of a couple misses in your head, one over Kaysen Wallace, where Kaysen made Luka Doncic work really, really hard. And Luka did miss a shot or two in that stretch. But that's not repeatable. You cannot count on that. You cannot think that that's going to happen through the course of a series. And so that's where you start to list out this pecking order of who do we think won't have a breakout season. And if they do, well, then you tip your cap. And that's what you did last postseason. You tipped your cap to PJ Washington. The Celtics play the Mavericks the exact same way defensively as OKC did. The Celtics won the series in pretty convincing fashion because PJ was not to the elite level that he was in OKC and that he was to date in that postseason. So I think that this was not some aha moment for the Thunder. Like nothing, they didn't do anything different than they did in that really competitive 6-game series. They just now have the tools with Caruso in place of Giddey and the step forward from Kaysen, in his second season to play that strategy in a much more sound way. They also got an MVP level performance from Shea. Like this was a one-of-one type of game from Shea where he was on another planet while Luka had his worst night. And that could probably just summarize the game right there because it is a star-driven league and your star thoroughly and forcefully outplayed Luka Doncic.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. You're going to want to check out some lines from Monday Night Football. The Bengals favored by 5.5 at Jerry World over the Cowboys. I have to start Cooper Rush in fantasy. The Simpsons broadcast is looking at some high-scoring football and has the total 49.5. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
The Bucks are headed back to Las Vegas. Can we call it an impressive win against the shorthanded Orlando Magic?
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast.
And there, the Bucks are headed to Las Vegas for the second consecutive year. I believe they're the only team that can say they're doing so. They beat the Orlando Magic, and coming in, I think everybody that may not have known much about the Magic knew. I know their defense is good. I know they got a lot of injuries, so the offense may be in question. So in some ways, you could look at this and say, hey, the defense was okay for the Bucks, but who was really out there for the Magic? I choose to be more optimistic and say, look, the Magic hit tough shots. I think the Bucks transition defense was excellent tonight. And overall, you're just continuing to see more of a movement in the right direction on both ends.
I've been beating the drum of it's just about wins right now, get above 500, and certainly doubly true in the cup where, you win and you're out, right? So, sure, I want to win an NBA Cup. I want to see the Bucks be NBA Cup champions. I want to see Darvin Ham and Taurean Prince continue their undefeated careers in the NBA Cup. That said, I have to say, this game was exhausting. Like the entire game. And a lot of it was because coming in, you knew that no Paolo Banchero, no Franz Wagner. Offensively, obviously, the Magic, over the past year have been a pretty bad offensive team. Even when those guys have been healthy, They have made their living on the defensive end. And realistically, what they had tonight, especially Jalen Suggs hurting his hand then at one point, there's no way they should have had the firepower to, ultimately compete in this game. So it was a frustrating game because on the one hand, the upside, Giannis doing Giannis stuff again, 37 points, 5 blocks. That defense was huge, rim protecting, multiple chase down blocks. Dame Lillard, massive close to the game. He really picked his spots, in the first 40 minutes or so of the game. But when they needed to make plays, we saw it in Boston, big time, kind of fizzle from the offense down the stretch. Not just Dame, but Giannis as well in that game. Different story tonight with Dame hitting that massive 3, getting to the rim for, I'm going to call it a dunk, Justin, that put them ahead. And then, made free throws all night. His playmaking, especially in the pick and roll in the first 2-3 quarters was great. So on the one hand, you had kind of Dame and Giannis doing kind of peak Dame and Giannis stuff. We'll talk about Chris. One of Chris's weirdest games, probably, I don't know if I've ever seen him not score a point and look like he was controlling the game with his passing. Took 2 shots, 8 assists, 3 steals, just a weird game from him as he works his way back. But, the exhaustion came from the turnovers. It feels like every other game or, at least once a week, they have just these games where they just get so careless with turnovers, sloppy with the ball. And, it just comes back to this idea of your margin for error is just so reduced when you just don't get to have as many shots as the other team. And the other piece was fouls. Just some of the fouls, especially on Jalen Suggs, like living at the foul line, AJ Green just randomly hitting him in the head, like 25 feet from the basket. The last, 5 seconds of this game where they're up 5 and Gary Trent fouls Jet Howard on a 3-point attempt. It's just like, guys, it shouldn't be this hard. Okay. The fouling. And then lastly, defensive rebounding again. It's weird. I feel like for them, as many times as I've complained about defensive rebounding this season, they've had a lot of games where it's been an issue, but then every other game they're good. So it's been weird. Like they're still a little bit above average defensive rebounding, but it just felt like that was another thorn in their side and really gave the Magic a lot of extra opportunities for them to stay in it in a game where they were, really short on offensive firepower. But again, job one is win. Bucks did that. They closed well. When Giannis was in the game, I felt supremely confident.
Mm-hmm.
And man, Bobby Portis as well. I haven't mentioned Bobby. We'll talk about him, but for him to nearly replicate offensively his performance from Sunday in Brooklyn, nearly go perfect again in this game where obviously they needed scoring and they were very frustrating on that end for long stretches. He deserves another tip of the cap. So a lot of positives, some kind of familiar sources of frustration, but at the end of the day, hey, they're 13-11. They're going to Vegas and see what they can do from here.
Yeah. I thought what you touched on there with the confidence when Giannis was on the floor. He missed, I think, his first 3 shots of the game, and they were all at the rim. But then after that, there was just no answer for him. They were dominating the Giannis minutes early in the first half, and you looked around and you said, okay, somebody else has to start to hit shots though. Like, this can't be a redo of what game was that earlier this year where Giannis just did everything offensively. And that's when Bobby Portis really came in and gave that offense a boost. As you mentioned, nearly identical to what we saw against the Brooklyn Nets over the weekend too. So I thought his minutes were huge.
Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more near you. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
Thrilling game against the New York Knicks.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast.
About the Toronto Raptors losing 113-108 to the New York Knicks to close out their 5-game homestand with a 3rd straight loss. They fall to 7-18 on the season. Still the most fun 7-18 could possibly be, but the fun in this one dampened just a little bit or a lot by Scottie Barnes going down in the 3rd quarter. In the midst of what was really like a beautiful, thrilling, exhilarating stretch of Raptors basketball where Scottie Barnes was cooking, everyone was kind of on the string and humming, and then he goes down and it's, despair, sadness all over again. We'll get into the injury. We're going to get into RJ Barrett, who had himself a revenge game and a half against his old team. We've got the good, the bad, and the coming up. But yeah, let's start it off with the Scottie thing. It looked really bad. When you see a guy go down, and I'm up in the upper reaches of the arena when I'm at these games in the gondola, when you can visibly read a guy's lips from that far away as he says, "Oh my God, I can't feel my foot," you know something's not right. And, for a second there, the sort of, and longer than a second, frankly, the sort of sports of it all goes out the window. You're just kind of worried about the guy. It's been a tough go for Scottie Barnes with some freak injuries. The hand thing last year, total freak accident. Getting elbowed in the face by Nikola Jokic, total freak accident. This one, getting tangled up with Karl Anthony Towns, fighting for a rebound. Like, it's a bummer. It's seeing Scottie take these freak injuries. We'll get into all of the sort of downstream effects of what it means for the team. But for Scottie himself, it's got to suck. He's just coming into his own, right? I wrote on Monday about how he's doing the thing and winning his minutes. It's the stuff that stars do. And for it to come crashing down once again for an undetermined amount of time is a bummer. We got some good news, of course. By now, you probably know X-rays were negative, which was a big sigh of relief in the media room last night when Darko Rajakovic passed that along. Still at practice today, he was in a walking boot, and he's going to get extra imaging done. It still seems like it's going to be a ways off for Scottie Barnes. I'm not going to guess as to the severity of the ankle sprain because I'm not an amateur doctor. But yeah, we'll see. Probably looking at the new year, maybe not. I mean, there is a history. If you want some copium on this fine Tuesday, Scottie Barnes does have a history of coming back quick from ankle injuries. He had one, I think, very early in either his rookie season or his second year. It might have been his rookie season where he got hurt early in the season. I want to say it was against the Pacers and came back within 4 or 5 games. And then in the playoffs that year, his rookie year, you might recall he had an ankle injury, I'm pretty sure, at the start of that series, and ended up coming back within that series. So maybe he has supreme ankles. Who knows? Maybe he'll be fine. Either way, it sucks that Scottie Barnes is down. And now, once again, we're staring down the barrel of the Toronto Raptors without their best player, without the guy around whom this entire season has been built as far as, gathering information, figuring out what kind of juice he's got as a number one. The returns have been very nice, especially over the last 10 games where the Raptors won his minutes and he was leveling up, I think, as a playmaker and finding his way with the 3-point shot and all of that. And now that progress gets cut short again. It's another delay on seeing the fully functioning BBQ trio with Barnes, Barrett, and Quickly. Maybe Barnes and Quickly are back sometime around the same time. We don't know. Quickly had some more imaging done on his elbow today. Still, it's a rest thing. That's basically what Darko Rajakovic laid out yesterday, is that it's a rest thing for Quickly with the UCL. It's not much you can do with that injury except for just wait for time to do its work. And so we'll see. But yeah, it's a bummer that those guys aren't available. And so now we're back where we were in November, where the Raptors went 2-9 without Scottie Barnes. And we saw down the stretch of this game, as was the case during that 2-9 stretch, the Raptors got the juice and the sort of hardworking spirit and the try-hardism to stay close in games against even very good teams. And the Knicks are that. They are a very good team. RJ Barrett, we'll get into him coming up later, but he was awesome in this game and seemed like he was going to sort of drag the Raptors over the finish line himself. That didn't quite transpire. We'll get into some of the stuff that went wrong for Barrett and the team at the end of this game. But I do think, it is just like, why did it have to happen in that game? It's kind of like in that Nuggets game where Scottie first got hurt, where it's like, wow, they're really taking it to the Nuggets here. This is exciting. They've already won one of their first 3 games. They're going to be 500 if they pull this out. Scottie goes down, and the inevitable result of losing to Nikola Jokic takes place. Similar thing here, although Scottie went out in the third quarter and not the fourth, but they were really kind of humming on all cylinders in that third quarter. A 13-0 run in the second quarter for the Raptors, where Kelly Olynyk's throwing dimes and Jacoby Walters in there, making stuff happen. The third quarter comes along, and Scottie Barnes hits back-to-back threes after sizing up Mikal Bridges on a drive and scoring over him. The flow, the defense, like they're shutting down really like the best offense in the league, and they're doing it pretty darn well up until Scottie goes out. And then it becomes more of a sort of trade buckets type of game down to the end. But yeah, it just to see them kind of finding that peak, and it's not even the peak. We haven't seen Emmanuel Quickly yet. We don't know what the full capacity of this team is just yet. It's still the Death Star in construction, if it's going to be the Death Star at all. Maybe you don't want to be the Death Star. The thing gets blown up a lot. But it's just to see the sort of peaks of what they're capable of against really good teams, and for this injury to happen in the middle of that, it's a huge bummer. Can they weather this stretch without Scottie Barnes? Like, probably not wins-wise, honestly. Like, the schedule coming up is not forgiving. There are some teams that they should beat or can beat, and some teams that are probably going to spank them. You've got the Heat coming up Thursday. There are no great shakes. Obviously, you had Scottie, where in the home and home they had a couple weeks ago, where they took one of them. It's going to be tougher without Scottie, but RJ Barrett seems to love to play the Heat, so maybe there's a thing there. The Bulls stink. The Nets stink. Like, maybe those are a couple wins you can take. Then you get Rockets, Knicks, Grizzlies, Hawks, Celtics, Nets, Magic. The Nets obviously are the Nets. The Magic are hurt right now, and Franz Wagner's out now, so maybe there's a win to be had there. They can probably squeeze 3 wins out of this stretch without Scottie Barnes if things go great. But yeah, this is not going to be a run where they rattle off a bunch of wins. And for you tank heads out there, don't worry. The tank's going to take care of itself here. It's all good. They're going to have lotto balls. I think they're down to 4th worst in the league already. We'll see here. But, I do want to just sort of get out in front of it and say, like, there's a lot of doomerism going on, I think. And maybe this is just me being in the Locked On Raptors Discord on a particularly gloomy Tuesday, but it does feel like there's a lot of, well, season's over. This is a lost cause, done. It's a wasted season, blah, blah. No, it's not. There's still a lot of time here to get some guys back, to get whole. And the nice thing is that they're not up against some kind of time barrier where they need these guys back in time to make a run to the playoffs. That's not the goal here. The goal is just to see these dudes play. And as much as it feels like we're deep into it right now, they've played 25 games. It's mid-December. Christmas is nearing. And all of a sudden, the trade season is going to begin and all of this. Like, there's still 57 games left to play on the schedule. It's a lot of basketball games. There's a lot of time for the team to get whole and still have meaningful stretches of minutes together. Just because it's been this rocky, horrible start doesn't mean it's always going to stay this way. And maybe it will. Maybe it's a cursed season. Maybe the idea of BBQ playing together is the basketball equivalent of Charlie Brown's Great Pumpkin. And it's just never coming, Charlie Brown. But maybe it will. And like in the meantime, there's a lot of stuff here to still enjoy. Like RJ Barrett, we'll get into him. It's going to be tough. Like, he's going to be overextended as the number 1 again, but Kelly Olynyk's back. What a stabilizer he's been. He's been super fun watching him kind of take the Chris Boucher minutes, which are this erratic sort of roller coaster. And Olynyk just comes in and calms everything down. You've got Grady Dick back and firing away. You've got Jacoby Walter looking really good. We'll talk about him later on as well. Like, there's still stuff here. They were still a fun interesting, enjoyable watch. It's kind of where they carved out their identity as a fun, interesting, enjoyable watch the last time Scottie Barnes was out. So they can do it again. It can still be exciting basketball, even if they're not winning. If there still can be positive things being planted, seeds that are growing and sprouting in this time. Not going to sugarcoat it. It sucks to not have Scottie, and they're going to have way less of a chance to hang in games against good teams without him. But in the meantime, like, there's still some stuff to glom onto here to enjoy. And I don't think this is like some death knell for the entire season or anything like that. Far from it. If this happened in March, sure. Maybe you're gearing yourself up for a last couple months like we saw last year, but there's still plenty of time between then or here and then, or then and now, or now and then. I don't know what am I saying? I don't know. It's going to be fun. They're going to be fine. There's going to be an enjoyable product on the floor because this team is wired to make the best of bad situations. They've done it all season long. They can probably do it again here, barring knocking on all of the pieces of wood, more injuries.